The results of some races from Tuesday are official or obvious, but the election will not be official until the General Services Administration signs off on the winner. That could be weeks from now. Aaron Mehta is deputy editor and senior Pentagon correspondent for Defense News. Aaron, welcome. What's your big takeaway from Tuesday night as far as how it impacts the defense community moving forward?
Yeah, obviously the first big thing is we got to know who wins as president, and that seems like it could take a while, and obviously that'll drive some changes. The thing that seems to be likely now is it seems unlikely the Senate will flip, which seemed in play up until Tuesday night. That now seems like the Republicans will hold on to the Senate. That means we're likely looking at a slim Republican majority in the Senate, a slim Democratic majority in the House, and obviously whoever wins the presidency. There have been a lot of talk from House Democrats, particularly on the progressive side, about trying to cut the defense budget by as much as 10%. We saw Adam Smith, who's the House Armed Services Committee chairman, say he was already worried about that and knows he has to fight against his own caucus to defend defense spending. Obviously, if the Republicans maintain the majority in the Senate, that helps that situation and probably brackets defense spending from any major cuts.
What's the difference between continuation of Senator Inhofe as the chairman of the SASC? He was reelected Tuesday night handily, wasn't expected to lose his race, as opposed to Senator Reid, the ranking member, who will stay the ranking member and not become the chairman as some people thought.
Yeah, Reid is not a flamethrower by any stretch of the imagination. He's pretty conservative for a Democrat in terms of defense policy. Obviously, he has a number of defense industries inside Rhode Island that he's focused on, shipbuilding primarily. I think they tend to work together on defense issues. We haven't seen huge daylight between the two of them as chairman and ranking member on major issues. There's been some social aspects that have broken, but for the most part, they tend to work together. Reid's a pretty laid-back guy in a lot of ways in how he presents himself. I think if it had flipped, you would see, again, more Democratic priorities coming through that committee, but a tone that would probably have been similar. In this case, I think we're going to see just exactly what we've seen the last couple of years with Inhofe and Reid working together.
And given that, and I know you're talking specifically about leadership on the SASC, but basically my takeaway from Tuesday night is that as far as it applies to defense policy and defense appropriations, things are pretty much the same. We're still going to have Adam Smith as the chairman of the House Armed Services Committee. We'll have a new ranking member on the Republican side as Mac Thornberry's retired. But we'll still have Inhofe and Reid as the leaders on the SASC. What does that mean for things like the National Defense Authorization Act, in your view? Not much progress seems to be happening so far on this year's bill. Now there's no reason for progress to not happen, right? I mean, the same players are involved, and they now know that they're going to be the same players involved.
Yeah, I would imagine that something gets worked out in the NDAA pretty quickly post-election. I mean, we've seen signals from these leaders that essentially they just didn't want to deal with it until after the election, and that they kind of have a plan in place for that now that the election's over. Obviously, I think the big question there is, again, with the presidency, if there's anything that gets put into the NDAA, for instance, some of the issues about renaming bases. President Trump has signaled he would veto, or at least is against that type of action. If that does make it into the NDAA, I think if Trump wins or loses, that's the type of thing that might get pushed to the next year or just have to kind of be an issue that gets worked out in the next month.
And that's kind of where I wanted to go next. Do we see a lot of those things coming out of NDAA just to make it happen, given that we're now going to be in the middle of November by the time we get really back to work on this?
Yeah, I don't know, honestly, because a lot of these issues have been discussed for a while. We've seen some support for the renaming bases from members of the Pentagon leadership. We've seen support from Republicans. It's less of an issue on the Hill than it is with the president. Again, if Trump is reelected and he says, I have a mandate from my voters and they don't like this and I'm going to veto this, I do think you'll see then agree, all right, we're going to table this so that we can get an NDAA passed because we need it. If Biden wins, I don't know, maybe they push the issue. Or maybe they say, we'll wait till next year and we know Biden will support this and we'll deal with it then.
Anything else that you'll be following as a result of the election, or do we now in the defense watching business just go back to paying attention to what's going on in the building?
I think there's a couple of things. One is the fate of Secretary of Defense Mark Esper. He is widely expected, if Trump is reelected, to not be in that position for much longer. We'll see what happens there and how quickly that happens, and if somebody is confirmed or not, given that we know that the president has enjoyed in the past having acting officials in those jobs. He said he likes doing that. I also think the defense budget writ large is something we're going to be watching, of course, going forward. Even if Republicans hold on and President Trump wins, there's not expectations of a big budget boost. Maybe we won't see the big defense cuts that some had worried about with a Democratic majority. The other thing is the fate of this, what Esper's called Battle Force 2045, which is his plan to build up 500 plus ships. There's a lot of skepticism, even from Republican pro-ship building individuals in Congress about this plan. If Esper's gone, how long does that plan last? Got a lot of backing also from Robert O'Brien, the National Security Advisor, who very well could end up as a Secretary of Defense in a second Trump administration. So there's a lot of personnel parts moving. The only other thing I'd say is we've already seen Senator Martha McSally is losing her seat, it appears, in Arizona. Alyssa Slotkin, who's a Democratic member of the House who had served in the Pentagon in the past, appears to have won her seat in Michigan. So there are a couple of seats that could change or could shift in those committees. And obviously, new people come in, there might be some new policies that come out of that.
Aaron, Mehta, thank you very much for joining me. It's great to have you back.
Thank you.